But mercy is not the language of power. Respect isn't born from exposed wounds. It's sculpted with control, with silence, with the courage to abandon the emotional script you were born with. Your entire life, you've been taught to be kind, open, and vulnerable. But what has that brought you? Peace? Or frustration disguised as virtue? Because you let those lies sweeten your mind like a comforting syrup until you swallowed that weakness as if it were a virtue. What no one told you is that while you were being kind to everyone, wolves in sheep's clothing sharpened their teeth and took everything they could from you. Because this world never rewards gentleness. It devours it like a hungry wolf. And now you find yourself like this, bleeding in public, waiting and hoping someone will see, understand your pain, and offer mercy. But look, that mercy never comes, because it's not a language of power. Respect is not born from wounds, but is carved throughout your life. In today's video, I'm going to show you why the image of the nice guy, kind, emotionally available, always trying to do the right thing, is quietly destroying everything you could have become. You've been taught to speak gently, to share your wounds, to seek validation through vulnerability. But the truth is, this world doesn't reward your openness, it exploits it. You've mistaken your silence for weakness, when, in fact, silence is power. You've mistaken your desire to be liked for a virtue, when, in reality, it's self-betrayal in disguise. Today, we're going to dismantle the emotional script you were born with and build something stronger. A man who doesn't beg to be understood, but forces the world to feel his presence. This isn't about self-help. It's about self-mastery. And it starts right now. The nice guy is like a broken mirror. He reflects something that seems whole, but behind the surface are fractures no one sees. He's not respected. He's tolerated. And the difference between those two is where his downfall begins. The nice guy exists through the eyes of others. He becomes a shapeshifter, adjusting his tone, his needs, even his truth, all in the desperate hope of being accepted. But what he gains in approval, he loses in identity. Because he doesn't build boundaries, he builds concessions. And every concession silently erodes his inner structure. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But the nice guy doesn't have a why of his own. He lives inside everyone else's expectations. He believes that giving himself away is noble. But when that giving is rooted in fear of rejection, abandonment, confrontation, it's not love, it's self-erasure. In psychology, this behavior is known as the fawn response, a trauma-based survival strategy where instead of fighting or fleeing, you appease. You become agreeable to avoid pain. But over time, that constant appeasement rewires your identity. You stop knowing what you want, only what others want from you. But here's what the textbooks don't tell you about the fawn response. It doesn't just steal your voice, it fragments your very soul. Each time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, you create a schism between who you are and who you pretend to be. The nice guy becomes a collection of masks, each one crafted for a different audience, until he forgets which face was originally his own. This psychological fragmentation creates what I call the approval addiction cycle. The nice guy gives away pieces of his authentic self in exchange for temporary acceptance. But because that acceptance was earned through deception, through hiding his true thoughts, desires, and boundaries, it feels hollow and unsustainable. So he gives away more, hoping the next act of self-sacrifice will finally earn him the genuine love he craves. But authentic love cannot be built on an inauthentic foundation. The most devastating consequence is the erosion of internal authority, that quiet inner voice that knows right from wrong, that recognizes truth from manipulation, that can distinguish between what serves you and what serves others at your expense. The nice guy has silenced this voice so completely that he becomes psychologically dependent on external guidance for even the most basic decisions. This fragmentation breeds a quiet, insidious resentment that grows like a cancer beneath the agreeable exterior. He smiles while his inner world burns. He says it's fine while his self-respect dies a slow death. The erosion of self-trust becomes so complete that even when he's alone, he no longer knows what he genuinely feels or wants. Watch a nice guy in conflict, and you'll see this psychological confusion in real time. He'll apologize for things that aren't his fault, explain away behavior that should be addressed, and somehow end conversations feeling guilty for issues others created. This is the hallmark of someone who has completely outsourced his reality to other people's opinions. The nice guy becomes addicted to external validation because he's lost the ability to validate himself. Every compliment becomes a drug, every criticism a wound that cuts deeper than it should. He develops what psychologists call emotional dependency, the inability to regulate his own feelings without constant input from others. And this is the first great lie, that being endlessly kind is a virtue. But in the real world, where respect is earned, not granted, this virtue becomes a liability. It invites exploitation. It broadcasts weakness. By the time the nice guy realizes this, it's often too late. Because he was taught to ask for permission, not to take up space, to explain his pain, not to command respect through presence. And the truth is brutal. Nice guys don't disturb. And that's exactly why they're forgotten. There's a reason why the most dangerous men say the least. Because power, real power, doesn't need to speak. It emanates. And silence is not emptiness. It's compression. It's voltage. You were conditioned to believe that communication builds trust, that vulnerability creates connection. But in a world of predators, transparency is currency, and every word you speak is a price you pay. To those who are strategic, your openness becomes a map. And silence? Silence is a locked vault. But not all silence is created equal. There's the silence of the weak, passive, fearful, born from an inability to articulate truth. This is the silence of the cornered animal, frozen in terror. Then there's tactical silence, deliberate, calculated, born from supreme confidence and strategic thinking. This is the silence of the apex predator, choosing when to reveal its presence. The difference lies in intention and awareness. Passive silence stems from confusion, social anxiety, or the paralysis of not knowing what to say. The man trapped in passive silence feels his power draining away with each moment he fails to speak. But tactical silence comes from abundance, the abundance of options, the abundance of information, the abundance of time. The strategic man remains silent not because he has nothing to say, but because he has too much, and he's choosing the precise moment to deploy his words for maximum impact. Consider the master negotiator who lets uncomfortable silence hang in the air after stating his terms, watching as the other party fills that void with concessions. He understands that humans are psychologically programmed to fill silence with speech, often revealing far more than they intended. Or examine the CEO who listens intently to a heated boardroom argument, saying nothing until the perfect moment to deliver a single sentence that shifts the entire dynamic. This is tactical silence in action, the weaponization of restraint. In high-stakes personal relationships, tactical silence becomes even more powerful. While others emotionally vomit their feelings, needs, and insecurities, the strategic man observes. He watches patterns, identifies motivations, and understands the unspoken dynamics that drive behavior. His silence forces others to reveal themselves first, to show their cards before he decides whether to play his hand. The psychological principle at work here is called social proof anxiety. When faced with silence, people become uncomfortable and begin to doubt themselves. They start talking to fill the void, often revealing their insecurities, their real motivations, their bottom line.
The silent man becomes a blank canvas onto which others project their fears and desires, giving him invaluable insight into their psychological landscape. Think of the interrogation rooms where hardened criminals break not under aggressive questioning, but under the weight of strategic silence. The detective who can sit comfortably in quiet confidence while the suspect squirms, eventually filling that silence with confessions. This same principle applies in every human interaction: romantic, professional, social.
The most influential people in history were not loud. They were precise. Their presence entered the room before their voice. That's the essence of tactical silence, the art of being felt without needing to explain. Philosophers like Lao Tzu taught this in ancient wisdom. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. Because silence guards your power. It forces others to project, to guess, to interpret. And in that space of uncertainty, you gain leverage. In psychological terms, silence is what creates asymmetry in interactions. The one who speaks seeks resolution. The one who stays silent controls the tempo, the frame, the outcome. When you stop justifying, you stop bleeding. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And in that stillness, you become unpredictable. And the unpredictable man is the most dangerous one in the room. Because no one knows what he'll do next. And more importantly, no one knows what he already understands. This is not about withdrawal. It's about strategy. It's about conserving power and releasing it only when the strike is inevitable and precise. Just like a blade that makes no sound until it cuts. Pleasure used to be a reward. Now, it's a weapon, and you are its target. Every algorithm, every screen, every fleeting thrill is designed not to serve you, but to sedate you. Discipline, then, becomes rebellion. In a world addicted to ease, the man who chooses difficulty becomes divine. But make no mistake, this isn't about routines or productivity hacks. This is about war, not against others, but against yourself, against the part of you that seeks shortcuts, craves comfort, and justifies weakness with soft words. Here's what most men don't understand. Motivation is a wildfire, intense, consuming, but ultimately unsustainable. It burns bright and hot, fed by external circumstances and emotional highs, but when the fuel runs out, it dies to ash. Discipline, however, is a controlled forge, steady, reliable, burning at exactly the temperature needed to reshape raw metal into something unbreakable. The motivated man is a slave to his emotional weather. On days when inspiration strikes, when circumstances align, when he feels ready, he performs admirably. But what happens when the inspiration fades, when circumstances turn hostile, when he doesn't feel ready, but action is still required? The motivated man crumbles because his entire system depends on factors outside his control. But discipline operates on a different frequency entirely. Discipline is the science of doing what needs to be done, regardless of what you feel like doing. It's the systematic training of your nervous system to associate right action with identity rather than emotion. The disciplined man doesn't ask, "Do I feel like going to the gym?" He goes because going is what he does. It's not negotiable. It's not emotional. It's architectural, built into the very structure of who he is. Motivation asks, "How do I feel today?" Discipline answers, "What must be done today?" Motivation seeks inspiration. Discipline creates systems. The motivated man waits for the perfect moment, the right mood, the ideal circumstances. The disciplined man acts regardless of circumstance because he has trained his will to be independent of his feelings. This is why motivation fails and discipline endures. The motivated man is at the mercy of his emotional weather, productive on sunny days, useless when storms come. But the disciplined man has built an internal infrastructure that operates independently of external conditions. He has forged neural pathways that make right action automatic, not negotiable. The neuroscience here is fascinating.
Every time you act against your immediate impulses and follow through on your commitments, you strengthen what researchers call executive function, your brain's ability to override automatic responses and make conscious choices. Discipline literally rewires your brain, creating new pathways that make delayed gratification and long-term thinking easier over time. But here's the deeper truth. Modern society has weaponized convenience against your evolution. Every app notification, every instant gratification option, every make it easier innovation is designed to atrophy your discipline muscle. The modern man's attention span has been shredded by design. His ability to delay gratification has been systematically destroyed by algorithms optimized for engagement, not excellence.
In this context, discipline becomes an act of war against the forces trying to domesticate you. When you choose the harder path, when you turn off the phone, skip the easy pleasure, embrace the uncomfortable conversation, you're not just improving yourself, you're reclaiming your sovereignty from systems designed to keep you weak, distracted, and dependent. Modernity has made suffering optional, and that's exactly why most men never evolve. Because pain, when chosen, transforms. Discipline is the fire you enter willingly, not to be destroyed, but to be reforged. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength comes from control. Control over impulse, over timing, over energy. It's not that disciplined men don't feel temptation. It's that they've trained themselves to rise above it again and again until it no longer holds power. Discipline is divine because it creates order from chaos. It reclaims sovereignty over a mind constantly pulled by dopamine traps. It reprograms the nervous system to associate struggle with clarity, solitude with strength. And in a world that worships comfort, you become a god among men when you choose the flame instead of the feast. Because only the man who sacrifices pleasure builds legacy, and only the man who conquers himself earns the right to command others.
If you've made it this far, comment, "Power is quiet." That one phrase tells me you're not just watching, you're absorbing, evolving, sharpening. And if this message is waking something up inside you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to the channel for more content that challenges your comfort and demands your rise.
A man without strategy is a pawn in games he doesn't even know he's playing. He reacts, he defends, he explains. But the strategic man, he plays with a different script. He doesn't chase validation, he engineers perception. To be strategic is to become unreadable. Not mysterious for the sake of theatrics, but for the sake of leverage. Every silence is calculated. Every word is placed with intention. You no longer exist to be understood. You exist to be felt. In military strategy, there exists a concept called the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act, developed by fighter pilot and strategist John Boyd. This framework reveals why some men consistently outmaneuver others in the game of life. The nice guy is trapped in a reactive loop, constantly responding to external pressures without ever taking time to truly observe and orient himself. He acts from emotion, makes decisions from desperation, and wonders why he always feels one step behind. The reactive man operates from the act phase almost exclusively. Someone challenges him, he responds immediately. Someone requests something, he complies instantly. Someone criticizes him, he defends reflexively. He's caught in an endless cycle of stimulus and response, never pausing to analyze the deeper game being played around him. But the strategic man has mastered the OODA loop. He observes not just what people say, but what they don't say. He notices micro-expressions, inconsistencies, the gaps between declared values and actual behavior. He studies patterns of behavior over time rather than reacting to isolated incidents.
He orients himself by processing this information through the lens of psychology, power dynamics, and human nature. He asks, what does this person really want? What are they afraid of? What drives their behavior at the deepest level?
Only then does he decide on a course of action. And when he acts, it's with surgical precision. His response addresses not just the surface-level interaction, but the underlying dynamic that created it. He doesn't just solve problems, he restructures the conditions that create problems. While others react impulsively to every stimulus, the strategic man creates space between trigger and response. This is where his power lies, in that gap where choice lives. He doesn't respond to provocation immediately because he's too busy analyzing the motivations behind it. He doesn't offer his opinion first because he's gathering intelligence about everyone else's position. This strategic patience creates what psychologists call cognitive asymmetry. When you can observe and process information while others are busy reacting emotionally, you gain access to patterns and possibilities they can't see. You begin to understand the chess game while they're still playing checkers. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. But the strategic man doesn't wear the mask unconsciously. He sculpts it. He chooses which parts of himself to reveal and when. He learns to master emotional timing, to delay expression until it becomes impact. Consider the strategic man in a heated business meeting. While others raise their voices and argue their positions emotionally, he listens. He watches who allies with whom, who fears what, who wants what most desperately. By the time he speaks, he has a complete map of the psychological terrain. His words, when they come, address not just the surface issue, but the underlying fears and desires driving the entire conflict.
The strategic man understands that being unreadable creates a psychological advantage. When people can't categorize you, they become unconsciously unsettled. They start to project their own fears, desires, and assumptions onto you. They reveal their hand while trying to figure out yours. In boardrooms, this translates to leverage. In relationships, it becomes magnetic attraction. In conflict, it provides the upper hand. This principle extends beyond individual interactions to reputation management. The strategic man carefully curates what information about himself becomes public knowledge. He understands that mystery creates intrigue, while transparency often breeds contempt. People value what they have to work to understand, and they dismiss what's immediately obvious. This isn't manipulation, it's intelligence. It's the recognition that in a world where everyone is performing their emotions, advertising their intentions, and broadcasting their vulnerabilities, the man who remains selectively opaque holds all the cards. In a world of transparency and overexposure, opacity becomes power. You learn that predictability is a liability, that people fear what they can't categorize, and so your presence becomes ambiguous on purpose, soft in tone, but sharp in consequence. To be strategic is not to fake, it's to filter, to show just enough to influence, but never enough to be controlled. You are no longer reactive. You are sculpted. You are no longer expressive. You are surgical. And that shift from emotional boy to strategic man is the death of chaos and the birth of command.
Every man has a throne inside him, but most die without ever sitting on it. Because the throne doesn't come with a crown, it comes with war. And the war is not out there. It's in the quiet urges to procrastinate, in the subtle hunger for praise, in the small moments when you know what needs to be done and you still delay. That's the enemy. That's the battlefield. And that's where the silent king is forged. Internal sovereignty, true kingship, means becoming the absolute ruler of your own internal kingdom. Your thoughts are your subjects. Your emotions are your advisors. Your impulses are your potential rebels.
Most men live in a state of internal anarchy, where every feeling has a vote, every desire gets a voice, and every fear holds veto power over their decisions. But the silent king has established order within. He doesn't suppress his emotions, he governs them. He doesn't ignore his thoughts, he directs them. He doesn't eliminate his impulses, he channels them. This is what it means to be sovereign. Not the absence of internal conflict, but the mastery of it. The silent king understands that external power flows naturally from internal order. When you can command yourself absolutely, others sense this authority and instinctively defer to it. This isn't dominance through force, it's leadership through presence. It's the gravitational pull of a man who has achieved what most only dream of: complete self-mastery.
He's not loud. He doesn't announce himself because his power isn't theatrical, it's gravitational. He walks into a room and shifts the air. Why? Because he's conquered the one thing no one else dares to confront: himself. This is not about dominance over others. It's about sovereignty within. You no longer explain your worth. You no longer outsource your confidence. You no longer chase identity. You embody it. In ancient texts and warrior codes, the highest form of leadership was always presence, not persuasion. The silent king leads without asking. He disciplines without punishing. He speaks little, but every word echoes. Legacy isn't built through noise. It's carved in silence, in sacrifice, in the relentless choice to show up alone again and again until the throne no longer feels borrowed, but earned. And when you sit on that throne, you finally understand what Machiavelli meant. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because fear is domination, but because fear is born from respect, and respect is born from discipline. This is not the fear of a tyrant, wielding power through cruelty and caprice. This is the awe-inspiring reverence one feels in the presence of a force of nature, something so grounded in its own reality that it cannot be easily moved or manipulated. It's the fear you feel standing before an ancient mountain, recognizing something immovable and eternal. It's the fear that comes from encountering a man who has achieved absolute self-mastery, who operates from principles rather than preferences, who cannot be bought, threatened, or swayed, because his center of gravity lies entirely within himself. You don't need to be understood, because kings are not explained. They are remembered. What you just heard is not comfort. It's a call to war, not against the world, but against the version of you that chose comfort over command. If this stirred something inside, it's because the man you're meant to be is still there, buried under compromise, fear, and softness. This is your moment to kill the emotional script and become the architect of your own discipline. No more waiting, no more explaining, just presence, just power, just silence. If you made it this far, it's because you needed to hear this. Take one more step forward and watch our last video. Use this now, Jacobo Grinberg's forbidden technique, to change your frequency, where we go even deeper into how to dismantle emotional weakness and rebuild yourself into a calculated, dominant, and disciplined version of who you were always meant to be. This isn't just another video. It's the blueprint for psychological reconstruction. We'll tear apart the very foundations of people-pleasing behavior and show you how to architect a personality that commands respect without begging for it. You'll learn the specific mental frameworks that separate kings from peasants, warriors from victims, legends from the forgotten masses. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. This channel doesn't offer comfort. It offers confrontation and evolution. We don't coddle weakness here. We incinerate it and forge something stronger from the ashes. Every video is designed to strip away another layer of the comfortable lies you've been living with and replace them with uncomfortable truths that actually work. The men who find this channel aren't looking for motivation, they're looking for transformation. They're tired of being nice guys who finish last, tired of being walked over, tired of living in the shadows of their own potential. If that's you, then this is where your real education begins. Hit that notification bell because the content coming will challenge everything you think you know about power, influence, and masculine identity. This is your invitation to join the ranks of men who stopped asking for permission and started taking what they've earned. Until next time, take care of your mind, your soul, and your truth. You're not alone on this path. Not anymore.